From a garden shed in Portsmouth to a record-breaking shot over in the hills of Afghanistan, one British rifle completely redefined what long-range accuracy really means. The terror of Counter-Strike lobbies, the assassin's tool in 100 films, and the weapon behind one of the most astonishing combat feats in modern history. Today, the story of how Accuracy International redefined what peak sniper rifle was, the Arctic Warfare Magnum. By the 80s, the British Army had a bit of a sniper problem. A big one. Our snipers were being sent out with the L42A1, which on paper is a perfectly good rifle, but the trouble is, it was basically a tarted up Lee Enfield, a bolt-action design whose roots go back before the First World War. Let that sink in. The British Army sniper in the 1980s was expected to carry a rifle which had its DNA in something his own great-grandfather could have carried in the Somme. Reliable, yes. Accurate enough, sure, but it was ancient, and Britain was sending men out to do one of the hardest jobs on the battlefield with a museum piece. The Falklands in '82 dragged the problem into the open. Against a modern enemy, the L42A1 just wasn't quite cutting it. So the Ministry of Defence launched a competition. The prize? A contract for over 1,200 rifles plus spares to finally pension off the old Enfield. And the biggest names in rifles came running. Remington, Winchester, Walther, Sig Sauer, HK, Parker Hale, 17 companies, all the heavy hitters of the gun world. But the company that won? Nobody had ever heard of. The underdog. Enter Accuracy International. It was founded in '78 by just a handful of people. The headline name was Malcolm Cooper, a British Olympic shooting gold medalist. He was working alongside gunsmiths and designers Dave Walls and David Kague. And when I say they were building rifles by hand, I really do mean it. Their workshop was basically a shed. The company these lads headed up was so small and unknown that when the tender opened against 17 rivals, they didn't even enter expecting to win. The honest truth is that they entered just to get feedback on their design. Their entry was the PM, the Precision Marksman. And the key thing is where it came from. Cooper was a world-class target shooter, so the PM wasn't designed like a military rifle. Built down to a price by a committee, usually developed from existing military designs, upgraded to sniper capacity. It was designed like a target rifle, from the beginning, from scratch, built up to a standard by people who'd actually won medals with the things. And it had one revolutionary idea at its heart: the chassis. Every other sniper rifle of the era worked the same way. You took an action and bedded it into a stock, which was wood or maybe later fiberglass, which needed a skilled gunsmith to hand fit each and every one. And even done well, that bedding could shift. Heat, damp, a few good knocks, two supposedly identical rifles could shoot differently, and the same rifle could quietly lose its zero in the field. For a sniper, that's useless. Accuracy International did something completely different. They built the rifle around a full-length aluminium chassis, a rigid metal spine that ran the full length of the weapon, with an action bolted solidly onto it. The polymer stock panels aren't structural at all, just covers bolted to either side of the action. Leave the barrel alone, let it free float. The actual sections that the sniper himself is going to contact with his face, hands or whatever, they're actually not that important. You don't need this entire thing to be stiff, just the chassis that sits into it. And the new chassis system did exactly that, without a trained gunsmith having to spend dozens of hours sorting out every single one. It held its zero through abuse, heat, and bitter cold. Parts could be swapped between rifles without starting again with the bedding in. It behaved like a tool, not a temperamental work of art. There were other clever touches too. The thumbhole stock basically forces the shooter into a great position every time. Adjustable sections allow you to fit the rifle to every user. And the iconic ball-ended cocking handle, it's just, well, you can't miss the thing. So, the unthinkable happened. The shed beat SIG, HK, Remington and Parker Hale, to name a few. In '85, the British Army adopted it as the L96A1, soon to be nicknamed the Green Meanie, for obvious reasons. It fired NATO 7.62mm rounds from a 10-round magazine. Scopes were mainly from Schmidt & Bender over in Germany, and the whole package came to over 6.5 kilograms, which is quite a lot actually for a 7.62 rifle, but as any target shooter will tell you, the heavier the rifle, the easier it is to remain stable on target, especially when shooting off a rest or a bipod. And thanks to the ground-up target-focused design, a noticeably higher percentage of soldiers were passing sniper training once they were handed this thing instead of the 1940s relic. With better tools, soldiers could focus more on camouflage, concealment, and the other elements that go into making up a great sniper. It's a fairy tale ending then. Except it nearly wasn't. AI had won the contract. Brilliant. But one problem? They were still fundamentally a garden shed operation. There's no way they could mass manufacture over 1,200 rifles on their own. So production had to be subcontracted to an outside firm, meaning AI had to hand over control of some of the finer points of their design and manufacture. When your name's on a rifle, but someone else is building it, could just be a recipe for some trouble. And the trouble soon came with one of the smallest but most crucial parts of any firearm, the firing pins. AI designed it to a specific grade of steel. The subcontractor didn't follow the specifications and used an unsuitable steel instead. Results were terrifying. The firing pin would snap clean into deep inside of the bolt, but because of how the design works, when it breaks, the firing pin isn't stuck away from the primer of the next round, it's poking out straight into it. Which meant that as you went to chamber the next round with no clue that the firing pin was broken, you were essentially slam firing the rifle before the bolt was even near to locked. Basically, the rifle could grenade in your hands. The classic out-of-battery detonation. One Royal Marine was seriously injured, and this wasn't just a minor wobble. The rifle was nearly recalled outright, and serious steps were being taken to actually put old L42 Enfields back into service. That's how serious the military took this. They were willing to go back to the museum piece that they just retired, rather than use this thing and risk hurting their own troops. The fixes were tougher bolt locking rings and a redesigned firing pin that would stick out the back a little bit where it would be visible so that you could spot if it was broken. Upgraded rifles got a C suffix in the serial, and thankfully, the military was happy to proceed with the fixes. So the legend nearly ended in 1986, and it wasn't even a flaw in the design. It was a subcontractor cutting a corner on a small little piece like the firing pin. In the mid-80s, the Swedish armed forces went looking for a new sniper rifle with one very specific, slightly brutal requirement. It had to keep working in the Nordic cold, down to minus 40 degrees, which, fun fact, is exactly the same temperature in Celsius or Fahrenheit. Either way, it's the kind of cold that can turn any normal piece of equipment into an expensive paperweight. The mechanism you thought was perfectly reliable could suddenly freeze up. The plastics you thought was super hard become totally brittle. It's a brutal temperature, or lack of. Accuracy International took the L96 and re-engineered it to survive that environment, and the upgraded rifle got the name that would define the entire family: Arctic Warfare. So what had to change? Tougher polymer replacing the fragile resins in the stock. The bolt was modified so that it wouldn't ice up and seize solid. A 3-position safety was added, and the trigger guard, stock hole, and magazine tabs were all enlarged so that a freezing soldier could actually operate the rifle while wearing thick Arctic mittens. Astoundingly, the chassis carried straight over, untouched. It was already that good. Sweden adopted it around 88 to 91 as the PSG-90. That contract put that company, which started in a shed, firmly on the world stage. Britain liked the improved version too and adopted it as the L118A1, mostly for special forces and the counter-terrorist role. And then, the floodgates were open. The Arctic Warfare spread and was adopted across the globe. Australia, Germany, Netherlands, Norway, New Zealand, Ireland, even Russia, and plenty more. The Americans ran their version as the Mark 13, Germany took the Magnum version on as the G22. The Arctic Warfare had spread around the world, but as the spread grew, so did the amount of conflicts it was going to get involved with, and some of them, particularly desert deployments, needed a rifle that could just reach out further and do more on target than its typical 7.62 loadout. So the Arctic Warfare family started to grow, and there are some really cool specific variants out there. First, the AWP Arctic Warfare Police, a shorter, stiffer barrel for police work, and the only AW with a black finish instead of the usual green. Next, the suppressed versions, the AWS and AWC, integral suppressors for subsonic 308. The covert version was the proper spy thriller style one that could break down small enough to fit inside a suitcase. And stepping things up, there's the 50 cal version, the AW50, which Britain and Australia adopted around 2000. Built for anti-material work, not specifically sniping, but damn cool. And the pick of the bunch, the AWM Arctic Warfare Magnum, scaled up for the 300 Winchester Magnum or the now legendary 338 Lapua Magnum. Longer bolt, 5-round magazine, fluted barrel for the British, and some devastating range. So British Special Forces got their hands on small numbers of the 338 Lapua Magnum AWM. Adopted as the L115A1, then the L115A2 with a folding stock and the AI bipod. 338 Lapua is a sweet spot cartridge. It reaches far further than the old 7.62 NATO rounds, with way more energy on target. But it's not completely overpowered, requiring a huge, heavy rifle like a 50 caliber version. It strikes a perfect middle ground and is still totally deadly out to a mile. Or a lot more than a mile. And then there was another leap. The Sniper System Improvement Program, the SSIP, produced the L115A3 long-range rifle, first fielded by 16 Air Assault Brigade in Helmand Province in 2008. The upgrades read like a sniper's wish list. Folding stock, adjustable cheek rest, smitten bender 5 to 25 power day scope with a P4 range-finding reticle, and an enhanced suppressor that cut flash and noise. And in November 2009, it really got put to the test. Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Corporal of the Horse, Craig Harrison of the Household Cavalry, is providing overwatch. Down in the kill zone below him, British and Afghan troops are pinned. 2 Taliban gunners are working a PKM belt-fed machine gun, hammering down on them. Harrison ranges the target, and the number that comes back is almost absurd. 2,475 meters. That's over a mile and a half. To put it another way, the length of about 25 football pitches laid end to end. In Harrison's own words, his rifle only really shoots to about 1,500 meters, so he had to lob the bullet in. These rounds were having to arc over and be walked in onto the target. It took roughly 9 ranging shots, him and his spotter using a bracketing technique until they had it. The first round, properly on target, was a kill. A second consecutive shot killed the other gunner, and the third disabled the machine gun itself, a far smaller target than a man. The numbers are staggering. The bullet was in the air for close to 5 seconds, and it dropped over 120 meters on the way down. It beat the previous record set by Canadian sniper Rob Furlong in 2002 by 45 meters. Harrison didn't even know he'd broken a world record. He found out later at his medal parade. But, and I've just got to get serious for a minute, Harrison paid a price. PTSD leading to medical discharge in 2014. And after the MOD leaked his identity, putting him at risk of kidnapping, they paid him $100,000 in compensation. He's been remarkably open about the toll that it took on him in his book, The Longest Kill. Definitely worth a read. That shot made him a legend, but it nearly destroyed the man who fired it. PTSD is real and serious. If you or one of your loved ones is struggling, then please get in touch with a veteran association in your country. The record stood until 2017 when a Canadian Special Forces sniper using a Macmillan TAC-50 finally surpassed it. But credit where credit's due. For 8 years, the longest confirmed kill in the history of warfare belonged to a British rifle built by a company that started in a shed. The Arctic Warfare didn't just conquer battlefields, it conquered screens, and it did, under a name that's confused gun nerds for a quarter of a century. In '99, a little game came out called Counter-Strike. You might have heard of it. It turned the rifle into arguably the most iconic sniper weapon in all of gaming. The in-game AWP Arctic Warfare Police, that's actually modelled on the AWM, the Arctic Warfare Magnum, so an entire generation of kids grew up knowing the rifle by the incorrect name. In the game, it was one shot, one kill, almost everywhere on the body, but loved and absolutely hated in equal measure. Valve loved it so much they put it straight into all the follow-up games. And then, it turned up everywhere. The Battlefield series ran it for years, often labelling it as the L96, but actually modelling the Arctic Warfare Magnum, until later games finally gave it the proper L115 name. Call of Duty Modern Warfare put it in millions more hands, and then there's PUBG, the game that arguably built the entire Battle Royale craze. From Counter-Strike to PUBG, the Arctic Warfare series is woven into the fabric of modern gaming. And on screen, it appeared in Die Another Day in 2002 in the hands of the world's most famous secret agent. 2 years later, Resident Evil Apocalypse handed an Arctic Warfare to a rooftop STARS sniper, using it to hold back the undead. Then Bangkok Dangerous in 2008, Furious 7 with Jason Statham, and countless others. And it's not just film, it appeared in TV as well. A standout I remember is Ultimate Force with the episode Just a Target, featuring the beast of the family, the AW50 50 cal version. Bizarrely, in 2005, Accuracy International faced liquidation. The firm that beat the giants was about to go under. It was saved by a British consortium led by Tom Irwin, alongside the original designers Walls and Craig, the men who'd started it all in the shed. Today, the company sells worldwide. It builds cutting-edge, multi-caliber platforms like the ATX and the AX ELR. In fact, you don't even need to buy a full Accuracy International gun. You can get yourself an Accuracy International chassis system and drop in a Remington 700 without breaking the bank. And you don't need a gunsmith with 30 years of experience to get it right. It started as a long-shot tender from 3 shooters in a garden shed, who only entered for a bit of feedback. It survived a near-fatal manufacturing scandal that very nearly sent it to the scrap heap. It beat the giants of the gun world, conquered the Arctic, armed the SAS and put a bullet on target a mile and a half away. The Arctic Warfare family isn't feared just because it's powerful. It's feared because for 40 years, when one of these was pointed at you, you were already out of options. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you could hit like, subscribe, and check out this video here for more great firearm content.